This is a Honda Cub EZ90. If you know, you know. If you don't know, you're about to find out. This is, in my opinion, the most iconic bike Honda has ever made. These were made in the 90s and they are very rare to find nowadays. And if you do find them, you would know how expensive these bikes can get. I don't think Honda has ever made a bike comparable to this since they made this back in the 90s, because this is such a crossbreed style bike. Closest thing you can compare this thing to is a scooter dirt bike. Just the looks alone of this bike is like futuristic looking, but yet classic. Like the colorways remind you of anything from the 90s, like jet skis or any of the old bikes. But the way that the plastics cover every single part of this bike, it almost looks like what you would see nowadays on electric bikes. All you can see is the rugged tires and showing that this thing is kind of dirt use, a full body, and then you see a meaty tire in the back. Other than that, this bike actually kind of looks like a kid's toy. And under all this paneling is a 90cc two-stroke engine, and these things actually rip. That is why if you look at anything from the EZ90 days, these were used for pit bikes at racetracks and people just trail riding and kind of thrashing these things. These things were even advertised back in the 90s, jumping them in the original Honda ads. Changed completely from the original Cub that they built, which was a four-stroke engine. They went two-stroke on this one. This one is also fully automatic CVT. A scooter in the engine with a two-stroke CVT engine, and you're looking at a pit bike everywhere else. This is a 1996 Honda Elite. The first model was the 1988 for this style body. And if you look at the front of these, they kind of share similar front ends. Have that very sleek front end look. Very scooter-like on this thing. The seats have very, very similar shapes. If you look here from the side, Honda really kind of kept the same look from the style of this. This isn't like a full dirt bike seat or a pit bike seat. It's kind of like a crossbreed of a scooter seat. And as you can see, Honda in the 90s kept everything very rounded. So everything's kind of bubbly. On these ones, you got a glove box back here. How it's crossbreeding into a scooter, which you would never find on a pit bike. This thing has a glove box up front. This is a full-on mini bike made by Yamaha back in the 90s as well. This one is obviously fully geared, 5-speed transmission, two-stroke as well, but around all the same era. So there was a really fun era in the 90s for these mini bikes, but you honestly just can't find anything like this nowadays. Now, besides just the look on these, I truly believe that these Honda Cubs are going to be the most iconic bike and probably some of the most expensive collectibles that ever made it out of the 90s. The problem is they're almost impossible to find, and sometimes even finding them in the worst condition will still end up being a few $1,000s. And for example, this Honda Cub. This is definitely one of the most clapped Honda Cubs I've gotten. I've had, I believe, 4 Honda Cubs now. This one we found a few months after I finished this one, and it was actually pretty cheap. But still, I believe we paid 700 or 800 bucks for this Cub in this condition. And it does have some of the panels, but everything on this is in really, really bad condition. But we are not going to be working on this thing in today's video because this is a future project to come, and I think we're going to do something really, really cool with this one. We are actually going to be focusing on this Honda Cub way back here. Hopefully I didn't scare you too much talking about the price and how hard these things are to get, because they are some of the coolest and most funnest bikes to rebuild. And you're gonna see that today. When we originally picked this thing up from my friend, it was not running at all. Took this thing all the way down to the bare essentials, got this thing running, completely rebuilt it, and brought it back to life. And now it is sitting in a mint condition, running perfect, and looks amazing. Now we're gonna get this thing in the garage to show you guys exactly what we did to make this thing look like it's brand new, like it did when it came off the showroom in the 90s. So we are jumping back to 2 weeks ago when I first pulled this Honda Cub into the garage. Now this bike may look super clean already, but it definitely needs some work. This thing has been dropped, and it also has 30-year-old pieces all over this thing. Refresh everything from belts and gaskets and build this thing back up to its prime. As this bike sits, it does not start at all. It won't even click over. I believe this is going to be a similar problem to what I had on my EZ Cub, a sensor issue with either the kickstand switch or the brake switch, because both those need to be full circuited in order for this bike to actually turn over. And right now we have zero power getting to the starter at all, even though our battery is fully charged. So first things first, we're going to strip the headset down on this thing and kind of just make sure that the kill switch is plugged in completely and the starter switch. After that, we're going through and we're stripping off the 1 million screws that hold this bike together, because there's so many panels. This thing is so clean, it even has all the original toolkit and owner's manual in the glove box in the front. But going through and taking apart this whole entire bike to kind of assess all the damage we have and then see obviously if we could find our wiring issue. And first things we're going to test is the brake sensor switch. So I took a little wire and just stripped both ends of raw wire, and we're plugging it into both ends of the switch to see if we can loop the circuit and make it actually start. Typical Honda Cub. Usually these things won't start for a few reasons. Obviously this one wasn't cranking at all. It was a little more easier to diagnose that it was obviously an electrical issue because the starter wasn't turning it over at all. But when it's that case with these Honda Cubs, you either have a problem with the CDI, which these are known to fail. This brake switch sensor right here, which is to be holding your brake in for the bike to actually start, and that's what this one was. Or it could also be your kickstand sensor, because the bike won't start unless the kickstand is up, and sometimes that sensor goes out, just sensing that the kickstand's down the whole time, and it will never let your bike get spark. First thing I did, went straight for this one because this was the issue on my last 2 Honda Cubs, and sure as hell, with the temporary wire I just looped through here, that was 1000% his issue, because this thing fired literally right up. So now we just get to clean this thing up, make it look pretty. We're gonna clean it all up just to get some of the gunk out of the way. We'll end up taking the carb out. We got a new reed pedal to put in, some new gaskets in there. We got new belts and for the CVT, new rollers, all the little bits just to make this thing solid, but yet keep it as original as possible. I'm gonna put some Purple Power in here because you can just tell where like a little bit of the oil spilled over and kind of just running down onto some of the harness down here and just down on the side of the bike. Small little things, but we'll clean it up and we'll get this thing primed. We have made our little jumper here for the brake switch, and the reason we did this instead of just literally splicing these two together is because these bikes are prized possessions, honestly, and they're collectibles. We don't want to ruin the harness for someone who maybe just one day wants to make this thing 100% completely OEM, and they want to come in here and add a brake switch that's actually working. Then all they gotta do is unplug this and plug it right back in, and they're not dealing with right there a ruined harness. Now we have successfully got rid of our brake switch, tucked this up in there, back onto the stock little clip here. All right, and I think we're gonna also loop the kickstand one, because if you know, on these they won't run when the kickstand's down, and that's because it's an automatic bike, and if the throttle gets stuck when the kickstand's down, it's gonna like take off on basically they add that completely for safety reasons. And it's kind of a pain in the ass because that means the whole time this bike's warming up you have to sit on it. But that's typically why on scooters they come with a center stand that lifts the back wheel up, because sometimes on cold start they're a little bit high idle, and with an automatic, especially this one with a softer clutch, it might want the bike to a little bit engage. We'll end up keeping the switch here just to have it looks so it doesn't have an open clip there like something's missing, but we'll have it looped. So the plans for this thing are we want to make it really clean, but we want it to be still a rider's bike. I didn't go through and re-powder coat the wheels or anything like that, because the wheels are always going to get damaged, and I don't want to be scared to even scuff some new freshly powder coated wheels. So I kept the wheels on mine, and then like some of the damages on the fork and stuff like that, I didn't worry about powder coating. I wanted all the bits that looked like this thing has been damaged, as in like plastics and all that stuff, to look good, because I don't have intentions of dropping mine again. We also got like new shock covers coming in, because you can tell these ones are a little bit faded on the blue, and just all the little nice bits, belts, rollers, all the nice stuff to refresh this thing. Kind of get this area stripped down because we're going to come in here with the power washer, and there's a lot of oil and residue that's kind of leaking down the side of the bike here, as you saw in the previous clip. So I'm getting some of the things out of our way, like the gas tank and other miscellaneous parts. So we're going to take this carb off and block off the carb, and then we're going to come through with the power washer yet again and clean off all the dirt that's sitting on the top of this engine case, because when we pull the intake off to get the new reeds in there, we don't want any of that dirt falling into the engine, and we got a lot to clean. All right, we got lots of background noise and lots of cleaning going on here. So we got carb and a bunch of bolts and hardware in there getting cleaned, cleaning up all the final bits of here. We went 3 times on the power wash, and we got everything now stripped apart in here now that there's no more crud and dirt ready to fall in. But very, very fun taking the intake out of these. If you don't know, basically these long bolts go into the intake, and they basically hit the top of this frame right here. So you have to get it to the last point and slide it all. It's not easy, but we got the reed block out. All right, we got our reeds here with our new intake gaskets, and we're gonna go ahead and swap these boys and reeds into there and get these things nice. All right, we got the reed block here with the new reeds in there. We just got that all cleaned up in there with some fresh intake gaskets, get that thrown together, and then we'll finally get the cleaned up carb and all that reassembled in here. All right, we got the carb all cleaned up and put back in there. All the vent lines and all the fuel lines hooked back up, everything besides what goes on the tank. We got our air box back on there, and that's screwed on. This kind of is floating right now because we're going to be popping this cover off next and doing a belt and all the other goods in here. We got the kickstand switch bypassed back in there, so now I don't want to start because we don't obviously have a tank on, but if you hit that, you can now start it with the kickstand being down. So we bypassed that. Now we're going to go ahead and throw some other goodies on. Just a battery tender, and we have that new OEM air filter to throw onto the airbox. But while we have the airbox lid off right here in this area, I'm going to go ahead and peel this sticker off because we have all the OEM stickers and labels, getting this really proper and back to a really clean state. So we got the one off on the swing arm here, but we still got to hit this one here and then kind of get all the residue off, clean that a little better. Still a lot of cleaning to do with this bike. After we get all the bits and everything thrown in, all the new bits, we'll go through and actually detail this whole thing. We're finally starting to throw on some of our new pieces with the new air filter and kind of is cleaning all the little bits in here as we slap it together, giving this bike all the necessary looks to make it look like it was all clean and original, just like before. All these EZ Cub 90s will always be worth going through and restoring like this because I truly think these will be some of the most valuable bikes later on in the future. We went to pull the plug out and I noticed the plug in here was a little funky. Took that plug out because we had a fresh NGK plug to throw in, and the ones that we run in these are the BR7HSs, and pretty similar to what we run in the scooters. We usually run the BR8s. So now we got this thing hung up from the ceiling. We can really start getting to work on the front end of this bike because we're going to be doing a complete fork rebuild overhaul on this thing with all new seals and all the bits for the fork legs. Alright, I got the muffler off and we hung it up because we're taking this torch to it now and we're burning all the oil out of the baffles in here. So let's see how much actually comes out of here. While we got the mufflers smoking out and burning all that oil that's stuck in the baffles, we got to work more on the fork legs. So we're draining all the old fork oil out of there. Then we worked on removing the clip that actually goes on top of the seal, and then the seal itself, which I used a tire lever for, and it popped out pretty dang easy. So we went through, we cleaned everything else in here, took out all the springs and kind of cleaned all those. Taking a Scotch-Brite to the leg to make sure we don't have any imperfections that could tear the seal when it's going up and down on that fork leg. And we got all our new bits and our new seals right here. Thank you to the boys at Cub Compound because this kit, which had the fork seals and the exact amount of fork oil that we need for each leg. So making it very, very simple, we got straight back to work. So we grabbed our fork seal and we got that punched into there using some grease, of course, to make sure we don't tear that seal. And we found a socket that fit perfect to kind of punch that in. Then we were able to throw the clip on the top of that. And now it's time we can slide our fork leg back into there. And then from there, it's just stacking everything else in. So pour the fork oil in, stack the springs in there. We're done with the fork rebuild. And now we get to put on the very shiny and super expensive OEM fork covers. All right, we just got our forks thrown back on the bike now. And then we have some new brake shoes to throw in too. So we'll take out these old ones. Everything in the wheel looks good. All the wheel bearings feel really, really good. So this bike's actually in really, really good condition. It's just small little things that were either just a little bit faded, a little bit damaged from crashing, and a little bit dirty. All right, new brake pads are installed. We also took that cam out and completely just cleaned everything in there and then lubed it all up now inside of there. So it's feeling really good now. It's feeling smooth. So let's throw it back in the bike and get that front wheel back on. I just hit the little baffle silencer, if you will, with some Scotch-Brite after we burnt all the old oil out of it. Now we're gonna hit it with some Steel-It. This is some of my favorite stuff. I used it on my entire bug chassis and many other projects on this channel. We are now going through and roughing up using some Scotch-Brite and sandpaper all the pieces that we are going to be painting. So we got the foot peg bar all stripped down and we got our Steel-It ready to go. We're gonna be cleaning all the springs and all the hardware, and then we're gonna be painting everything to make it shiny, just like this kickstand and the muffler are now. The Steel-It looks amazing on these products, so I'm excited to see everything all shined up as we get these parts and everything in the parts washer, and then come back and actually finalize cleaning all the little bits of here. We got one more thing to do in the CVT, and that's pretty much it for all the new parts. Other than that, it's pretty much all cleaning and making this thing look pretty from here on out. We're using our engine hoist here to hold our parts up while we paint everything, just to make it easier and make sure everything's drying without rubbing on anything. So super easy, and this Steel-It paint lays down amazing. Just like my Honda Cub, we are hours and hours and hours into cleaning now. Just pulled all these bits out the parts bin. We're still gonna wipe them down, but we got everything kind of shined up again. All the chain tensioners, all the pieces you won't ever even see, but we know that they're cleaned. All the foot peg springs, and then we have everything painted and nice and pretty over here with all the Steel-It. So it looks so clean. This literally looks like powder coat. It actually has steel in the paint, It's very, very durable. We actually have OEM brake shoes coming in, so we're not even gonna run these China ones. We'll put some new rollers in, a new belt, new gasket on the CVT cover, throw that all back together, and then we'll finish up on the back end here and the chain, and then it's finally time to actually put in some elbow grease on cleaning up all the plastics and all the new graphics and all the other little fun parts. All right, so the final bits of the CVT overhaul. Like I said, this is gonna be our last of the new parts. We have a brand new belt to throw in here. It had a different belt in here. It wasn't the original Honda belt, which was kind of surprising. So we threw an original Bando belt in there that came in the stock and some fresh rollers in the CVT as well. So we got the CVT cover thrown back on with the new gasket in there, and now we're looking at everything kind of cleaned up. This is kind of our base now, especially for the engine area. We just got to do the swing arm, the new chain, and all those bits. Here is all our parts that have been painted and fresh out of the parts washer. Everything is looking absolutely amazing. As you can see, even with our foot pegs, we have all the hardware looking shiny as ever. We have a brand new chain as well, which we just cut down 2 links to match to the stock length. So we're gonna go in here, clean up the swing arm, and then throw in our new chain and the back wheel as well. And the way I'm going to be cleaning this up is using some of these magic erasers, which work really, really well, especially on this bright white paint. So it'll rub off all the little imperfections. Worked on cleaning up all the wheels and all the little bits right now, even though we're going to go through once it's completely put together and clean all the parts where you can actually see everything. And we're going back in right now to remove the China brake pads that we put in previously in the beginning of this video for some OEM ones, because they finally came in the mail, and we want OEM always. And with everything else going on, it is finally time to get these plastics ready, because we have finally got to the point where we're ready to put things back on this bike. And as you can see here, the original piece that was on this bike was very damaged. This area of the bike was crashed pretty hard on both the handlebars and this side, and it has major damage. But I have another blue nose, which is in better physical condition, but it's dirtier and faded. And now we need to spend some time and some elbow grease to shine this thing up so it actually matches the bike. And with just a little bit of cleaning, we were able to clean up this left-hand side and then buff this side. And this is just the start. We're going to be doing that about 3 times, just how we cleaned up every other part of this bike. As you can see, we have the whole underneath shining on this bike, from all the parts that we had in the parts washer to some freshly repainted pieces. This thing looks brand new under. It's sad that you will probably never ever see this unless you're the person pulling off all these panels the next time this bike needs to be worked on. But it is so satisfying seeing how clean this bike is. We finally got the panels thrown back on, and as you can see, we have a lot of residue here from the old stickers. It took literally hours to peel off these old stickers, and we still have so much more work to put in all these plastics to try to get that yellow tint away. And I actually did an amazing job at buffing this, and I didn't record most of it because I spent hours and hours and hours doing so. But as you can see here, the plastics are shining now, and now we are adding the brand new decals on. Of course, most importantly for the Honda Cub, we have the handguards. Doing the final touch of adding the handguards in, the real cherry on top for these bikes, and I noticed right away that on the right hand side where this bike was crashed, the whole mounting point for this thing was bent in. Handguards have a groove where it locks in on the brake lever mount, and it makes sense why the other handguards were completely broken right there. Now we're taking my favorite plastic polish, which I use on literally every bike I have, and we're shining this thing up. You can tell a huge difference immediately in just hand polishing this bike with a microfiber, and she is finally complete, looking better than she did even 30 years ago. With about 10 hours of working on this bike and about 40 hours of cleaning it, we got this thing to look brand new again. There were so many things I did to this bike and didn't even film it because it'd be such a boring process to watch, but you can definitely notice all the work that we put in when you look at all the details on how this bike is shining right now. Even the silver under tray that is under this bike, we actually had OEM paint code matched and repainted all that and cleaned all the grommets and all the black rubbers that are used to hold this plate on, because they were oversprayed silver from the previous owner. But with all the pieces combined, this thing looks amazing now. And the only thing that looks better than a Honda Cub is 2 Honda Cubs. All right, we have completely restored this Honda Cub now, from non-running, dirty, to damn near mint, and this thing absolutely rips. This is the only Honda Cub I ever rode that actually picks up the front wheel. For some reason, my other 2 are so slow, and now this one makes me want to go back and change those up. I need to add some reeds and some other things to that one, because this one is a ripper. That's gonna do it for this video, boys. Make sure you guys go down to the link in the description down below because it's the last chance you can get this merch before it's gone off the site. We're getting new merch soon. So that's gonna do it for this one. I'll see you guys in the next video.